Hi, everyone. Welcome. I want to welcome everyone to today's event, Building a More Inclusive College Environment with alumna Becky Curran Kekula. The Chronicle of Higher Education cited in 2023 that ending ableism in higher education will require significant cultural shifts on campus. College administrators and faculty members can kickstart that change with small steps that go a long way toward creating a more inclusive environment. And today we invite you to partake in one of these small steps on our long journey. My name is Molly McKeon, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Accessibility Services in the Student Success Center, Chair of the ADA and 504 Committee, Co-Chair of Believe, Providence College's Student Disability Advocacy Club, and adjunct faculty in the college's graduate program in higher education. I'm fortunate to have been a part of an incredibly dedicated team and working group to bring this event to you today. And I want to thank Etta Tremonti, and feel free to just do a little wave or stand if you can. E. Cole, who's not with us today. Lily Hamilton, I think she's in registration. Thank you, Lily. And Avery Budnick as well. So thank you for our working group. And then before we begin the program, we want to thank Institutional Advancement and the Providentia Society. This event was made possible through a grant competition sponsored by the Providentia Society, which was formed to honor the contributions of Providence College women of the past 50 years and empower and encourage alumni and other supporters to advocate for issues which elevate and amplify women's voices through collective giving. The Leadership Committee stewards gifts made to the Providentia Fund by collaborating with the college to award grants that underwrite projects, programs, and activities that promote, empower, and amplify women of all ages. Aligning with the goals of Providentia, our mission with this event is to engage diverse alumni to give students possibility models of how they may embody PC's values in their worlds, begin a broader conversation about how PC can support and empower people with disabilities on campus, and learn from the positive global impact and leadership of a female Providence College alumni with a disability. We also want to especially thank Emily Synan, Assistant Director of Donor Engagement, for supporting us through the application and planning phase. Thank you to College Events for all of my last-minute mistakes and requests, including Meg Turner, Assistant Director of Advancement Events and Special Projects, and Lauren Felix, Director of Advancement Events and Special Projects. Thank you also to our co-hosts, Accessibility Services, Institutional Diversity, and Believe, and also our co-sponsors for enthusiastically supporting and promoting this event. I know we have lots of folks in the room today from Women and Gender Studies, Sociology and Anthropology, Social Work, School of Business, the Honors Program, Health Sciences, Elementary and Special Education, Communications, and American Studies. Lastly, I just want to take a few moments to introduce Avery Budnick, who is a member of our working group and who will introduce our speaker and kick off the event this afternoon. Avery is a graduating senior at Providence College, earning her bachelor's in elementary and special education. I've grown to know Avery over the last 4 years as a strong disability justice advocate through her work as vice president and then president of Believe, the college's student advocacy club, where she works tirelessly to educate the PC community about disability, inspire the community to engage with those who are different, and evaluate equity for people with disabilities on PC campus and beyond. Avery started the Access Peer Mentoring Program in 2023, pairing incoming students with disabilities with upperclassmen who work with accessibility services to build a stronger support network and ease this unique transition to college. She has also served on the college's ADA and 504 committee. Much of her work has helped to move the needle on campus accessibility and has culminated in this important event today. And Avery will continue to make incredible impact this fall as she enters Harvard University's master's degree program in human development and education. So a huge round of applause and thank you to Avery.
Thank you, Molly, for the introduction, as well as to the Providentia Society, our co-sponsors, students, faculty, and staff for joining us today. Becky received her Bachelor's of Science degree in marketing from Providence College in 2006, where she started to gain a passion for influencing change behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. Upon graduation, Becky submitted 1,000 applications, attended 100 job interviews, and completed 3 temporary job assignments. Becky started working full-time in the entertainment marketing department, followed by the comedy touring department at Creative Artists Agency, which is the world's leading entertainment and sports agency. 5 years later, she's worked at CBS Television Studios, where she assisted with the casting of pilots and television series. During this transition, she also served as the marketing director and co-founding board member of the Catalina Film Festival. She also founded Disability in Media, which focuses on positive disability inclusion storytelling through social media. After her 6.5 years of working in the entertainment industry, Becky launched a public speaking business. A prolific public speaker and advocate for disability inclusion on a global scale, she has spoken at over 500 venues for disability inclusion. This includes corporations, nonprofit organizations, and global agencies throughout the United States and beyond. She is passionate about advancing disability inclusion in schools, the media, and workplaces, among other spaces. Most recently, she spent 3.5 years working in the Equity and Inclusion Department at the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, the world's largest entertainment union. After SAG-AFTRA, she supported the implementation of a national diversity plan of action to achieve accurate representation of those groups historically excluded from the entertainment and news media. Becky currently serves as employment chair for the Little People of America nonprofit organization. She is also a member of the Board of Advisors for the National Center on Disability and Journalism at Arizona State University, the Positive Exposure Charity, and the Understanding Our Difference organization. Please warmly welcome Becky back to PC.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, Avery. It is a pleasure to be back here. Can everyone hear me? Okay. That's the most important part. It is a pleasure to be back here. I was just looking it up, and I had the pleasure of speaking at Ruin Hall about a decade ago. So I'm really excited to bring my experiences back to all of you, because a lot can happen in a decade. I'll start off by talking a little bit about my upbringing, accommodations I had in school that were helpful to me, that may be helpful to some of your peers, some of your students. Talk a little bit about my professional experience, and then some of my personal experience again, and takeaways that could be something that you can leave with hopes of creating a more inclusive school environment. So starting from the early days, most environments I walk into, nobody has seen a person like me, a person with dwarfism. There are only 65,000 people with dwarfism in the United States and about 650,000 worldwide. And those people include my parents. The day I was born, my parents were told that I had dwarfism because there was someone in the delivery room who had seen a person with dwarfism be born before in that hospital. They really didn't know what that meant outside of the negative portrayals that exist in the media. Is our child going to be a circus freak, a leprechaun, a munchkin? What references do we have to base this diagnosis off of? It took digging in deep and doing as much research as possible. Whatever was available back in 1984, definitely not as much that's available now, for them to find a doctor about 6 months after I was born who assured them that I was going to be okay. And one of the greatest pieces of advice he gave them was treat me no differently than my average height older sister of 3.5 years, and also try to keep her in the same school system so she can get to know the same people over time who can create a community around her. And once I was old enough to start going to school, my parents worked with another family in our community, and their daughter was my age. We're actually only a week apart. And they planned for the two of us to be in the same class from preschool and 7th grade. And I truly believe that that accommodation prevented me from experiencing bullying in the early years that we may see kids experience today. So it's really important from early on to have a strong ally around you. After 7th grade, we were separated because of last names in the alphabet homerooms were alphabetical order. I was C, she was W. But I feel that that was also a sign that it was my time to launch and try to be my own person and own advocate in the classroom. I experienced several medical challenges during my school years, but my greatest challenge was when I lost the ability to walk before my sophomore year of high school. I was sailing and I was wearing a wetsuit, and I thought that maybe the wetsuit was on a little too tight, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. It was related to spinal cord compression. Because of my smaller body, all of my organs are more compact. If I was sitting next to any of you in the audience, most likely we would be the same height sitting up, but my organs are still more compact because of my shorter arms and legs. I ended up having back surgery, which was performed by Dr. Ben Carson, who later got into politics, but I am still forever grateful for him saving my life and helping me learn how to walk again. As I said, a lot's happened in the past decade, so we have more to talk about my journey, but at that point in time, I was able to reach peak recovery. Once I was finished with recovering from surgery, unfortunately, I had some struggles keeping up with my classes because there wasn't the proper plan set up for homeschooling, and it had to do with a lot of elements in the community. I went from honors classes to college preparatory classes my junior year, which felt very discouraging, but if I took it as serious as I did all of my classes before that point, I was able to get back to the level that I had hoped for my senior year. But another challenge during my junior year in high school is a lot of my friends started getting interested in dating, and they just thought of me as the friend with dwarfism, didn't really have the potential to date anyone in our community. And it led to a lot of nights where I was at home with my parents. I was speaking earlier and telling them that I wish that I took my parents up on the offer of taking me out in the community, but on a Friday night, a high school student doesn't want to be seen with their parents. So it was a challenging time, and that was probably one of the pivotal moments as I was getting closer to adulthood where I realized that things were going to be hard at times. There was an earlier stage when I was really young where I had mentioned to my father when I was playing soccer, after soccer practice, I asked why I couldn't run as fast as everyone else, and he immediately responded saying that you were born this way for a reason, you were given difference on a platter, everyone in their whole life strives to be different. And I accepted that response, and really, I don't think felt as impacted emotionally until I got to those high school years when it started becoming obvious that I would face challenges fitting in. Once we got to senior year, a lot of my friends got back together. I tried not to hold on to the grudges that I had from being left out junior year, and we tried as best we could to enjoy each other's company before we were all going to go in different directions to colleges. I applied to 9 colleges, and I ended up choosing Providence College because I was going on tour and I was in one of the cafeterias, and there was a person with dwarfism who was already attending the school. So even though, especially back in 2002, Providence was not known to be a diverse school, it was the first time I was in an environment where I saw someone like me. And I thought that would lead to a great inclusive education because people had had that initial exposure. Like when I said, when I was first born, my parents, they hadn't seen someone like me, it caused them to be a little nervous. But the fact that some of the administrators had seen a little person made me feel more comfortable knowing that I'd at least be the second. So once I got here, I participated in the Urban Action Program. I think one thing that people with disabilities learn very early on is that we need to go above and beyond to get accepted in any environment, and that includes getting involved in extracurricular activities as ways to get to know people who have similar interests. So I participated in the Urban Action Program, got to know 150 people before moving into the regular semester. And I had 2 roommates, and they were both assigned to me before we got to school. I had not met them before, and one roommate and I got along really well on the phone, and I didn't feel that I needed to tell her that I had dwarfism, and it was too early to be able to look me up on the internet. So we showed up at school. I had already been at school because of Urban Action. She shows up and is terrified. And a lot of that has to do with lack of exposure to people like me or perceptions in the media that exist up until that point. And it took about 6 months for us to get on the same page and for me to prove to her that I wasn't going to bite her or scare her, and I was fully capable of taking care of myself, would not be relying on her for help. After about 6 months, I was trying even to move into other dorm rooms, and there just wasn't an opportunity because the school was at capacity. But I found a way to work through it, and fortunately, I had met a friend during that Urban Action program who continued to be a close friend during freshman year, and she was my roommate for the rest of my college experience, which made a huge difference. Not being afraid to go back to my room every night and knowing that she was going to be there to support me. But one of the greatest aspects of our friendship is that she's willing to give constructive feedback. She's willing to tell me if I'm doing something wrong or doing something that doesn't make sense. And I think that's something that doesn't happen a lot with the disability community. We're patted on the back for being inspirational, and no one is willing to give us the feedback we need to learn and grow. So there was one time when we were walking actually back from the grocery store. I don't know if there's still the Shaws nearby, but that's where we would go and get our groceries. And we were both holding bags, and she told me that I needed to walk a little faster. And there was someone who was driving by who had their window rolled down and went right to her and said, "She's trying as hard as she can." And she just had a straight face and said, "No, she isn't," because she knew that I was more capable of walking faster. And I appreciated that support, so I wouldn't just get away with things that maybe other people would let me get away with. And it's very possible maybe I was distracted on my phone too, which probably didn't help. But we did face another challenge going into our junior year. There was an opportunity to have a 6-man apartment, and there were people on the swim team, because she was on the swim team all 4 years, who were going to make up 4 of the rooms, and then the other 2 of us were not on the swim team. So there was one person who was not on the swim team who did not want to be with me. So that then led to us not pursuing that 6-man apartment. And sometimes people just aren't even willing to explain why they don't want to be in your presence. But in all honesty, I don't want to be around people who don't want to be around me, as hard as it may be. And that continued on when I was applying to jobs. So I had several internships while I was here at Providence, 9 total. And towards the end of my internship search, more of them became related to working in the entertainment industry. I worked at the NBC affiliate in promotions and publicity. I was in the publications department. I also was asked to help with the casting of the movie Underdog that was filming in Providence. And then there was an organization or a company, Allied Integrated Marketing. They were initially called Allied Advertising, and I found them through just a list of Boston's top ad agencies. Since I grew up in Massachusetts, I would come back and forth in the summer. And that ad agency changed my perception on how people within all aspects of society view the entertainment industry and the power that it has on the people. And from an early age, I knew that I wanted to change perceptions, but I just didn't know how. And when I knew that entertainment has such a strong avenue, that drove my passion to move out to the West Coast after college and pursue a career in the entertainment industry. It was not easy. I was offered a job to work for a talent manager who happens to be a little person, and unfortunately, the job fell through right when I got to California. So I utilized this Providence College alumni network and found a lot of great people including someone named Ron Trupa, who was the founder of the Catalina Film Festival, and his parents happen to be here today. And they were willing to give me advice on how to get my foot in the door in the entertainment industry. And one of the pieces of advice was get a Hollywood creative directory and send out resumes to everywhere and anywhere and see what sticks. They also said, just work for my talent manager, even if it's not going to pay anything. So I worked for someone's talent manager, and it just gave me more exposure and experience. And while I was working these unpaid jobs, I was proactively treating every day like a job, looking for a job, sending out resume after resume, going on interview after interview. Very possible that sometimes up to 4 interviews a day, driving around Los Angeles, my presence wasn't that great. It's very possible I was exhausted. But nobody was willing to give me feedback. So I assumed that because of my short stature, it was the reason I didn't get jobs that I was fully qualified for. So after those 100 interviews, I decided to go through some temporary placement agencies, which I really appreciate the structure of those agencies because they'll interview you, they start to believe in you and realize you can work, and they send you to go work somewhere, and you can prove yourself. And I had a few smaller assignments. You also have to look at the communication and how the job is posted because it may say temporary to full-time hire or just temporary. So you have to know what you're signing up for. So the first few assignments were just temporary. But then when I was able to land at a talent agency, it was listed as a temporary to hire. So I had the potential of becoming a full-time employee there. Unfortunately, I took French in school. I didn't end up taking it at Providence, but I took it up until my senior year of high school. And the first job opportunity that came about at this talent agency was in the Hispanic marketing department. But because I was able to connect with someone, a Latina woman who was well respected in the entertainment industry, she saw and learned about my struggles to get to where I was, to get into that building that had so much power. So she was willing to find someone who could take the phone calls from the Spanish-speaking clients, and I could learn the administrative tasks that didn't necessarily require a background in speaking Spanish. And once there was an opportunity in the entertainment marketing department, I was able to transition to there. So examples of what we would do in entertainment marketing is actually Hasbro was one of the clients at the time, and they would turn different toy properties into potential movies. So that when the Transformers movie came out, there was the director, Michael Bay, was represented by a different agency, William Morris, so he ended up convincing Hasbro to go with him to the other agency, but then soon after we were able to get Mattel because we had already had that toy experience. Harley Davidson was one of our clients, and we would help try to find celebrities who are not yet riding a Harley Davidson who might want to ride a Harley Davidson. But there's risk involved because we found someone like Shia LaBeouf. He wasn't riding a Harley, so we said, we're gonna give you a Harley. He just gives it to his mom. So you don't always know how these things are gonna play out, but corporations are wanting that exposure to the industry. And I continue to learn how much power the industry has over societal views. And I waited because I knew that I needed to prove myself as a hard worker before sharing what I was really passionate about. So I spent a few more years working in the comedy touring department where I'd seek out comedians at different comedy clubs around town because the comedy agents didn't have time to be at every single show. And it allowed me to gain an interest in having an eye for talent, but also writing off some of those comedians who didn't have nice things to say when someone who stood out was in the audience. And after doing that for about 2.5 years, I started to realize that I didn't want to be a talent agent. I just didn't want that lifestyle, as glamorous as it may look. And even now, fast forward a decade, there are people who started there when I was there who are very successful agents to this day, who I've talked to more recently. But still, was not something I was fully interested in, but it was a great place to learn about a powerful industry. People started asking me towards the 4-year mark, what is it you're interested in? What are you passionate about? And this included one of the partners of the talent agency who represents a lot of very high-profile people. And after hearing my story and my interests, he felt comfortable sharing with me that he had a father who had lost his legs to cancer, and he lived with his father for 8 years before his father passed away. I was so appreciative that he shared that story with me, but he followed up with answering the question that I had, and it was, does anyone else at this agency or any of your clients know this story about your father? And he said no. And it got me so frustrated because someone who leads an agency in a high-profile position has the potential to share a story about disability, share about his father with his clients with the potential of them making a movie about his father. But that just never happened, and that wasn't the culture that I was in this environment. And I was able to gain interest in putting together a panel discussion in the month of October in 2011, because October is a big month for the disability community, National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And I had 160 people from around Los Angeles come to the agency for this conversation about people with disabilities who work in front of and behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. Unfortunately, only about 6 people from the agency where it was held showed up to this event. And that's when I knew it was time to look elsewhere for opportunities. And I had an opportunity to work at CBS Television Studios in the casting department. And casting is a great area to influence who gets to play these roles in these TV shows. So any type of speaking role on any CBS Television Studios produced show, I would have access to influencing. Unfortunately, a lot of the casting directors were not willing to open the eyes of the producers or writers and present talent with disabilities for roles that were described as doctor, teacher, lawyer. They would only present characters or actors with disabilities if the role specifically stated, this person has a disability. And that was frustrating in and of itself. There was one incident where I was reading a television script and there was a character who was described as 2 inches taller than a little person. And it made me so mad because I know they probably wanted a little person, but they didn't know if they'd be able to find one. And that's, again, a moment of frustration. There were 2 people that I was working for at that agency, or at that television casting office, and one person did not want me there from day one, and the other had recruited me. But by the end of the year, the 2 of them were kind of on the same page. And I think that had to do with not getting the proper training, so not knowing where they wanted my input, even though I came from 5 years at this agency and I was transparent about what it was I was passionate about. And that was a turning point when I decided I'm gonna move back home and figure out if there's another way that I can influence people and teach them about people with disabilities, little people, all different types of walks of life by sharing my own story, not relying on the entertainment industry to share the story, because we do know that even in the entertainment industry, there are roles described as disability where people who don't have that lived experience are playing. And there's still a very long way to go. There has been progress, but I wasn't really willing to wait around. So I moved home. It was not an easy decision because, as I said, I was working for 2 people. One person didn't want me there from the start, so I already felt like I was getting kicked out the door. I happened to have a roommate at the time who also has dwarfism, was a foot shorter than me, and he unfortunately was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So he was going to have to move back to Georgia, where he was from, and I decided to move back home to Boston. It was not easy being an adult with a disability living back home. I put the pressure on myself and wanted to figure out how I could get out as soon as possible, as much as my parents were excited to have me home. So again, I treated every day like a job, looking for a job. And I found ways to speak at all different types of organizations. It started with my sister's school. She's a middle school teacher, and she asked me to come meet her students. And instead of feeling like I was just wasting time going to meet these people, even though it's never a waste of time meeting people, I found a way to make it more productive, practice sharing my story, and continue to find every place possible to share my story. And one of the places where the message really stuck was the Little People of America organization. I didn't talk about too much, but I did get involved with that during my college years, and I think that was another thing that helped me get through and help my confidence, having another group of people in the world who I could relate to and talk to with the social exclusion challenges that continued to come up. But there was a parents' meeting that I went to and I sat in on, and I said, I'm not yet a parent, but I want you to all know that I'm here as a resource. I'm willing to go into the schools, talk to the administrators about the accommodations I had growing up, and also talk to the whole student body, let them know the challenges I faced, and let them ask me all the hard questions. So your kids who are having trouble transitioning from elementary to middle to high school don't have to be the ones to answer all these questions or be worried about fitting in when they're going to make that big change, where they're going to meet a whole new group of people. Because I was fortunate that that didn't happen to me too much growing up. I was embedded in a community, but I know that families can't always control if they have to move out of town for a job or just can't have their child in the same school system for one reason or another. So really trying to find ways to build those inclusive environments. And as I continued to do speaking, I was asked to go to Kenya to speak on behalf of a Little People organization there. I went to their launch event. They were trying to form this organization, so they had more formal support. There's something called the World Dwarf Games. So it's kind of the equivalence of the Olympics for people with dwarfism. Every 4 years, it's in a different country. And the year prior to when they were having this launch event, there was a World Dwarf Games in Michigan, and they tried to get permission from the administration of Nairobi, Kenya, to go do these sporting events. But because they didn't have a formal organization in place, they were denied the support. And this formal organization allowed them to be prepared for future events like that to participate in. So that was an eye-opening experience. I got to meet a lot of great people, also realized to appreciate even the little things in life, because there's so much that people don't have and they still find ways to smile and dance. And after that opportunity, I was ready to figure out what was next. Even though I love speaking and continue to do it on a regular basis, I wanted to be part of a team again, a part of a work environment where there were other people around that I could collaborate with. And the event that I had at the agency, I had met someone who led diversity at the Actors Union, and that led to an opportunity to move to New York City. And I was there for 3.5 years working in the diversity and inclusion department at the Actors Union. We just advocated on behalf of all the underrepresented groups, and because of my disability identity that I started to own, I felt most connected to the Performers with Disabilities Committee and appreciated the work that they were doing. But a lot of these actors who were part of these committees are not actively working because they had time to go to 2-hour meetings every quarter. And there also wasn't an opportunity for me to grow within the organization, and working in an actors union in New York City is not a high-paying job, and it's very hard to make ends meet. So because there was pushback year after year for me to get the promotion and feel the appreciation that I deserved, I decided to, through networking, switch over to work for an organization that helps corporations with disability inclusion. And it reminded me that corporations are ready, willing, and able to show up. They just want to know how. So direct competitors are working together to advance disability inclusion across their organization. And they're not as image focused as the entertainment industry, which is a lot slower when it comes to advocating for inclusion because they're so focused on the box office numbers. So companies like Microsoft, Accenture, SAP, Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers are all big players in this space wanting to do better when it comes to disability inclusion. And they participate in an index that I'm in charge of called the Disability Equality Index. And it's a benchmarking tool that companies are taking to measure disability inclusion across their enterprise with hopes that it leads to hiring more people with disabilities, but also getting more employees to feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to work and asking for the accommodations they may want and need. One of the biggest things I'm passionate about telling people is that it's important to let people know that they can ask for any type of accommodation, from the job application to onboarding to interview to retention and advancement. Put it out there and intentionally use the word disability for any diversity conversation. I think people try to be forward thinking, or they think they're in the future of things by being broad and saying, when we mean diversity, we mean everyone, but you end up leaving people out if you don't map it out. So it's really making sure that both college and employers are working together to have people feel included. And I think with colleges specifically, it's making sure the Career Center is working closely with the Disability Services Centers so people with disabilities do not miss out on the job opportunities that exist out there. Because even if it doesn't say, just like in the entertainment industry, if it doesn't say disability, people don't think they're included. But there's no reason why people shouldn't apply. And people with disabilities also have to be honest with these job descriptions. You have to know that you can perform the essential duties of the job, maybe ask for a few accommodations that may help, but we have to be truthful on both sides. But it starts with getting that invitation to try and apply to those opportunities that exist out there. And I think this campus was a great launching pad for me, and the alumni network is phenomenal. Even just how I was struggling with that transition from the talent agency to the television studios, and I had another opportunity to volunteer to start this film festival, and it was another thing that lifted me up even when times were hard with those other jobs. And there's such a connection. People who go to people, there's a level of trust and loyalty that exists when you hear that someone went to Providence. And I'm proud to be an alumni of Providence, and I hope to continue to be a resource for everyone here. And I'll just do a quick fast forward on the decade that I've experienced since speaking here. And I did the normal adult things. I got married, I had a baby, and unfortunately after 6 months of age, my baby passed away. There was an accident at the hospital, and he died in my arms. And my passion and the fire under me is even stronger now because I want to create an environment that he would have been proud to grow up in. He had dwarfism like me, and I hope and know he's looking down on us and wants to continue to see change so he could feel included in this world. So, and this recent surgery I had has led to unexpected complications, but it doesn't mean that there's no hope for walking again on my own. I've been able to do some walking around the house with braces and a walker, and going to physical therapy and occupational therapy as much as possible. So we're still in the hopeful stage of recovery, but also the learning to accept stage of you can still live a pretty good life even if you need to use assistive devices to get around. So we want to continue to make this campus open and accepting of people no matter how they show up. And we do know that disability is the one category that anyone can become a part of at any point in their life. And 75% of disabilities are those non-visible, non-apparent disabilities. So I don't even know how many people in this room have a disability, but I hope that you feel comfortable sharing your story someday because it will help others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. So we want to spend just a few minutes, open up the floor for questions. We have maybe 5-10 minutes or so. And then afterwards, feel free to enjoy refreshments in the back. We're going to be here for about another half hour or so. So you're welcome to come up and ask individual questions as well. So with that, any questions from the audience?
I'm coming to you with the microphone.
Hi, thank you so much for your story, Becky. It's so encouraging and insightful. What recommendations would you give for us to learn more about inclusivity for those that need accommodations, like podcasts, maybe any type of like websites? Could you give some recommendations?
Absolutely. I would definitely go to disabilityin.org, the organization that I work for. There is a very public-facing page of resources that are great. I know that there are a lot of ADA centers around the country that are also very resourceful. There's the Job Accommodation Network. It's called askjan.org, and that talks about different types of accommodations that may come up. And then one of the boards I'm on, the National Center on Disability Journalism, has a disability style guide. So I guess it's more in the etiquette category, but it may talk about things you may want to be prepared for when interacting with people with different types of disabilities. And American Association of People with Disabilities, that's another great resource.
If you have a question, please raise your hand.
Hi, Becky. Thank you so much. What, if anything, do you find challenging about your activism when it is directly tied to your identity?
I think what's really challenging more recently is you see a lot of articles and conversations about inspiration porn and everyone not wanting to be called inspirational. But then I know as a profession, I've chosen to be an advocate and actually do inspire people. But it's trying to find that fine line of, I don't want to be called inspirational for every minute or every day I wake up and get out of bed. And I think a lot of people in the community feel the same way, where they're just going to their job, they're not doing anything exciting, but there may be things in their day that they are doing that's admirable. So I wonder if we even just change the conversation from inspirational to admirable, where it'll sit a little bit better.
Thank you.
Hi. Do you have any steps or recommendations for how we could build a more welcoming campus for our students with disabilities?
I think that's a great question. I was talking earlier about really making sure you get at the incoming students as soon as possible. Maybe have a few students who are willing to share their story with hopes that these students will share their stories sooner rather than later. But really creating that welcoming language. I always say, ask questions rather than make assumptions. So be open and honest about your willingness to help someone who looks like they may be struggling, but also be prepared for them to tell you that they don't need help. I often use the example of being in a grocery store, especially when I was not using a wheelchair. I was a 4-foot woman trying to reach something on the top shelf, which is most likely not going to happen. But there are people that have been in the aisle of the wheelchair who are fearful of my presence, just probably based on past perceptions that they've seen. But then there's other people who are really nice, and they're willing to put it out there that they're there to help if I need it. But we can be stubborn, and we want to try on our own first. So it's good to put the offer out there that you're willing to help, so I know who I can go to if I really need that help. And most likely I will go to them after I try once myself. So putting it out there that you're there to help if someone needs it is a huge step. And I went to this unconscious bias workshop once, and I thought there was a really cool exercise where they had you find someone in the room who looks nothing like you and find 3 things you don't have in common. And that was a lot harder than anyone thought it was going to be. But if you open up a dialogue, even if you tell someone you like their shirt, it may lead to a larger conversation. And I think people want to feel a connection. So as soon as you're able to create that opportunity, it'll be powerful.
Hi, Becky. Thank you for coming back to PC. I know you mentioned it had been 10 years since you were last here, and I don't know how much you've stayed up to date with everything happening at PC, but have there been any successes or changes that you're really proud of that's happening here since you've been back or when you were a student?
I think I'm most proud, even just from learning today, all of the added efforts for accessibility and disability inclusion. We keep saying we have a long way to go, but the fact that it's even happening is huge. And I've also thought, even just in this day, talking, that I wasn't ready yet to talk about my disability when I was at PC. So I didn't seek out those opportunities, even if they existed. I had a few different accommodations, but nothing major that made me feel like a strong advocate for the community within the space here. I did become one of the co-founders of the Toastmasters Club. I don't think it exists anymore. So that was kind of a starting point on launching public speaking skills, knowing that maybe someday I would talk about disability, but I think there was a lot of exploration happening during my time here, and I didn't seek out the resources even if they did exist. So the fact that they're more front and center, I think encourages people to seek out the resources sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
All right, thank you again so much, Becky, thank you everyone for engaging in today's program. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for really just emphasizing the importance of sharing your story. I think it's a great message for so many students, faculty, staff in the room who maybe haven't shared that part of themselves, and just knowing that it can make such a big difference in creating those coalitions to advance accessibility here at PC and really beyond in the workplace as well. We ask that you complete our brief feedback assessment. We have some QR codes around the room. We're going to have them in the back with the desserts as well. And this concludes the speaking event for today. Again, welcome to join us for desserts. We'll be here until around 7. One more quick note, the question about the resources. On the way in at the registration table, there are little bookmarks. A couple of years ago, Megan Lassard from the library had created a community resource guide on disability and neurodiversity. So it's all through the library resource page. There's hundreds of resources, organizations, JAN, Job Accommodation Network, they're all centralized there. And you can also find specific PC resources. So if you're a faculty or a staff member that may want to consider accommodation requests, if you're a student, everything is located there. So definitely encourage you to grab one of those bookmarks with the QR codes as well. Thank you.
Thank you.